You are watching Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen. There is Paul Rosen, brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and, of course, Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, and Paramount Sports Management, where I'm not there today. And unfortunately, this is the mystery. My camera only works there. Everywhere else, it seems to be just my voice. So
push the on button, they said to me. Push the on button. Hey, listen, we got two great guests. We're going to be talking about the 1975-76 Winnipeg Jets. I was lucky. I was actually there watching the game as a youngster. Avco Cup winners. How many people even know what the Avco Cup is? Under the age of 40.
Yeah, you know what? I remember I was 15, you were 16, but that was good hockey back then, Gouche. The Jets had some pretty damn good teams.
Well, I remember Norm Bowden, of course. He's coming up with Peter Young. As we went through my young career, I got a chance to skate with him a couple times. I don't recall if Mr. Bowden was there, but I do recall skating with Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nielsen and that Lars-Erik Schuberg. So we're going to get some great stories from these two young men. They're going to tell us what it was like with the Avco Cup. Obviously, we're talking about the first team. They won multiple more afterwards. Peter and, of course, Norm will be able to tell us about that. So I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get started, anything out there that's intriguing?
Yeah, the president of the United States still wants to be the president.
All right, we got to stay out of politics, religion, and talking about that other stuff that people do. Listen, we're really excited to have Peter Young. This guy, I know his voice. He's got one of the ultimate voices. He's just a legend broadcaster. I'm going to read off his incredible resume. And, of course, we got Norm Bowden, the original Jet. He signed his contract before anybody else. He was a cornerstone to that team. And, of course, then came that guy named Bobby Hull.
Yeah, Bobby Hull was pretty good.
Yeah.
I want to ask.
They were good together.
Was Norm the captain of the Jets?
You can ask him when he's coming up.
Yeah.
They are coming up right now, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Young.
Well, you know what?
Norm Bowden, no, you take your call.
It's okay. I'm talking to Bill Lasuk right now, and Bill.
Hi, Bill Lasuk.
Yeah, Bill can't hear you, but I'm on the air now, Bill. So I'm just feeding you. Hey, there's Norm Bowden. He wants to say hi to you too. So, Bill, look at hi, Norm. He said we'll check this out for another time. We'll get some 5-year-old to teach Bill how to work the gizmo.
We're on the same page.
Okay, well that's okay. I am literate, so the next time we'll get together, you, me, maybe Joe Daly, and maybe even Mike Ford, and we'll all put our skills together and see if we can sign on at one point. How's that? Okay, thanks, Billy. Bye.
Hey, you mentioned Mike Ford. That'll take a lot. I played against Mike exhibition game in Germany. What a
he started one of the great brawls of international hockey. Norm was there. We were in Prague, Czechoslovakia at the end of a training camp.
Great place.
That featured stops in Finland and Sweden, and they were pretty docile events. Those ones, but we got into Prague, and I think the guys on the Czech team thought we were playing for Olympic gold or something like that. And I mean, even in pregame warm up, there could have been a fight. But then, as soon as the game started, somebody came down, and Mike just, it was like a shish kebab. He was going to put him in a fondue, and that started a war. And then not being used to this, Norm would have been used to this, but when you play over there, especially at that time, every time Mike touched the puck or came on the ice after that, they whistled so loud in the arena that you had to plug your ears, and that's their way of booing, I guess, because Mike couldn't do anything. But the best part was nobody came near him for the rest of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I played over there for 16 years, and the whistling became just normal every time you went to their rink. But when you came home, everybody was applauding you. And with Mike, he blocked more shots than the goalie made saves. He was like a vacuum cleaner.
Threw himself in front of everything.
You can
you have deficiencies at one end of hey Norm, you know this, you know the opposite. If you have deficiencies at one end of the ice, you excel at the other end, and that's what Mike did.
Exactly.
No question. Hey, listen, Paul, just want to let you know, Peter Young is a Winnipeg-based sports management consultant and international known broadcaster producer. I personally have watched him do his work. He's also a member of the Canadian Olympic Academy. He is the only broadcaster who have handled play-by-play for the Winnipeg Jets, the WHA team. And of course, you also did the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and one of our favorites, the Gold Eyes.
Right, first 2 years.
Yeah. For 2 decades, he acted as a broadcaster for CTV Network, and you've been everywhere, Canada, US, as well as Russia, Czechoslovakia, Sweden. Wow, you were just in a suitcase the whole time. And of course, we've got Norm Bowden, the original Jet. I'll tell you what, his stats are crazy. We're going to talk to him about those in a few minutes. But you know what, Peter, if you don't mind, could you just give us, for people that don't know what the Avco Cup is, and also the creation of the Winnipeg Jets, I'm going to say dynasty when it came to the Avco Cup.
Yeah, well, the cup was named after a financial services company out of, I think, Hartford. I imagine that Howard Baldwin was heavily involved in getting the cup named and built. It's a beautiful trophy. The Jets dynasty, although they were very successful in the first year, they didn't win in the first year. The second year was not great. The third year was the year that I got to Winnipeg and was fortunate enough to get there at the same time as Anders Ulf and Bobby became one line, and Lars-Erik Schuberg arrived and, in my mind, became the greatest defenseman that's played for the Winnipeg Jets in any league, WHA, NHL, or their new NHL. And that year was spectacular. And those three guys together became magic, and in a way probably changed the way the game is played, in that even Glenn Sather said that he patterned the Oilers when they went into the Stanley Cup run, that he patterned the Oilers after that first WHA Jets team that featured the Swedes and Veli-Pekka Katala and Hexery Aranta. And Normie, of course, Abby McDonald had passed on as far as being an active player at that point, but it was still revered in Winnipeg and around the dressing room. But it was just a spectacular time to be in Winnipeg, as you know, as a youngster. I think of early on, one of the features of that year was Bobby scoring to beat Rocket Richard's record on the Valentine's Day of '75. Scored 3 goals that game to break the Rockets record of 50 and 50. And, we were lucky enough to broadcast that game. That was one of the first WHA games that I was able to do play-by-play. And the worst part of it was in an era when those games were taped on those massive 2-inch tape decks that were in your VTR room at the TV station. And, not that there wasn't great quality and everything, but it was 1975, and the news department needed that tape to tape a news feed the next day. So sadly, games like that gone. They were taped over the next day, which is sad in the technology we live in today, where everything is kept digitally. There's just so many incredible games that were played that we can no longer go back and watch. I do have highlights of a lot of those, but not the real tapes.
Peter, there are rumors, and I think they're true because I spoke to both Paul Henderson and Ron Ellis, that some of the games for 1972 were retaped over with Hee Haw because nobody really took it all that serious. So that's why
one quick story about '72 series. Back in '97, it was the 25th anniversary, and I was not at CTV Network. I had been east to work for the Blue Jays for a couple of years and came back and worked for another local station here. And on the 25th anniversary of that series, I knew everybody in Canada would be doing a story about, Team Canada '72 and Henderson scoring the winning goal and all that. And I thought that's going to be really boring if I do the same thing. So I did a story, an expose, where I claimed that CBC has perpetuated a 25-year hoax on Canada, and the Russians scored twice after Henderson and actually won the game and the series. And I took 2 goals from Game 5 where they were wearing the same colored jerseys and going in the same direction, and I dubbed those 2 goals in after Henderson's, and I played the national anthem, the Russian national anthem, with the Russian guys standing at center ice, and went so far as to to claim that Russia won the series and we've been duped for 25 years. But I needed some supporting arguments, so I went and I interviewed Joe Daly, the goalie of the Jets, and told him what was up. And when I said, Joe, he said, I can't talk. I've been sworn to secrecy. There's nothing I can say about that. I said, well, you were the third string goalie. Well, he wasn't, but I said he was. I said, you were the third string goalie. You were sitting there in the stands. You saw it. I can't talk. I had to sign a non-disclosure. I'm not allowed to talk about this. So then I went to CBC. A friend of mine, Ross Rutherford, who had worked for me at CKY and then went off to ABC New York to work with Peter Jennings. And I went into the actual CBC offices, and with their logo behind them, I set it up, and then I asked Ross to comment on this, and he said, hold it. And he picks up the phone. He says, we need to talk to the legal department right now. Peter Young has found out about it. And then he just hung up, and that's all I used. But the best part was Dryden had come through Winnipeg a couple of months earlier after he had been appointed by the Canadian government to go across the north and do surveys on Inuit schooling. And he had come back into Winnipeg, and I was fortunate enough to be chosen by the news department to go and do the story on it, and the fact that I knew him a little bit. And so I'd kept that interview for some reason. And part of that interview about him being up north, he told me about the sun never going down and how it was just so amazing. And his exact words were something like, I was left wandering the streets, wondering how this could be. And so I just took that clip and I said, even goaltender Ken Dryden admitted that Canada lost the series, and I dubbed in the clip, I was left wandering the streets, Peter, not knowing what had happened. And then I played the Russian national anthem, and that was it. I signed it off. Well, within 30 seconds, the switchboard went berserko. The story didn't hold water much longer, because I got a message from the owner of the station saying, go on and refute that story, or don't come to work tomorrow. So that's my story about the 72 series. And
the Russians, I've been over there many times. The Russians still believe they tied the game. They won it because of goals for and against.
Some formula by which they came out on top. It'd be like working for Trump. There's some formula by
there
which
is,
you won,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Paul, I know you got a question for Norm.
Yeah, that was a crazy story, Peter. By the way, sorry you can't see me. I'm one of these guys that's having computer trouble on a daily basis, so you just hear me. Norm, great to see you again. I wanted to ask you. Those days were incredible days. You guys win the Avco Cup. You're on top of the world. What's it like to look back on it now? What memories do you have of that time?
Well, Paul, it's good to see you again, and Gouche and Peter, it's good to see all of you. Anyway, it was great year and great days, especially going to Europe and having training camp. Like we started in Sweden, went to Finland, and then we went to Czechoslovakia, and that's where we finished the training camp. But it was great just to be there and to experience training camp in Europe. And of course, in Sweden, we brought the top 5 or 6, 7 players from there, and then went to Finland, and we had the top couple players that played in our team in the 76 championship team. So we were, filled with a lot of talent, especially the European talent and the Swedes. And of course, Sjöberg, who was like Peter says, was one of the best defensemen in Winnipeg to ever play the game in Winnipeg. And Tom Berglund was there. Teddy Green was there. Larry Hillman. You could always rely on Larry Hillman, because what he did, once he got the puck, he never gave it up. He just flipped it out of his own zone, and we were never in trouble when Larry was had the puck in our zone. But just being having training camp in Europe was a great experience. And as Peter was saying, we had a brawl in Czechoslovakia, which is unheard of in European hockey, but it was a lot of fun. And I reminisce every day that playing in the 75, 76 championship was great. And I'm always reminiscing. You see, I got my championship ring here for the
yeah, wow.
and then I got my original jersey that I finished my season with and my career with in Winnipeg. So I I just keep reminiscing, and I even show this ring to the fans here in Vancouver, and they're just elated to see the ring. They're just flabbergasted with this ring. So I can't forget the days, great days.
Hey, Peter, you got to see him play most of his career, probably all of it. Bobby Hull, Norm Bowden, Chris Bordelot in the, I guess it would be the 72-73 season. Man, Norm, you put up big numbers with Bobby and Bordelot. What a great line. Obviously, that set that you had mentioned, that was their first year. What can you tell us about Norm Bowden at that time, Peter?
Well, to be brutally honest, I didn't know Norm then because I didn't move to Winnipeg till '74. So I missed the first.
I knew that.
Years. I was still teaching high school in Thunder Bay and working at the local TV station where, coincidentally, I got the job at the TV station when my great friend Kenny Nicholson moved to Winnipeg, and he got me his job, and Kenny became the play-by-play voice of the WHA Jets for their entirety. So I didn't meet Normie till I got to Winnipeg in the summer of '74, and I didn't even know I was going to stay here. I had a very successful teaching career in Thunder Bay and worked radio and TV in Thunder Bay at the same time, which the Board of Education allowed me to do. And I just came to Winnipeg to basically work for the summer. And you might not believe this, but I was a football coach, and Henry Jansen, the athletic director at the University of Manitoba, I had coached with him at Peace Gardens Athletic Camp, and he asked me to come and help coach with the Bison. So I really, I was only there I came in the door in June. I was hired by CKY Radio to work for the summer, and I walked in the door, and the day I walked in the door, they asked me if I could do TV for a couple of weeks instead because they needed to give a guy holidays. And so I said, well, I can do that. And make a long story short, by the end of the summer, when the Jets season was starting, I was offered the chance to stay, which was, in my mind, not that attractive until they said, well, how about if you can do CFL football after one season? I said, well, that makes it attractive. So I got a leave of absence and stayed that year. And that was the year that Hull, Hedberg, and Nielsen, basically the hot line, took over from the luxury line, which was the line that Normie played on. And so I didn't get a chance to see Norm until that season. And, by that time he was fat and old and couldn't shoot.
And gray.
No, I'm just kidding. He was still good. He was still damn good.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, listen, looking back at that team, my God, Hull, Nielsen, Hedberg, Peter Sullivan, I loved him. Lindstrom, Ford, Bowden, Bergman, Lars-Erik Schuberg was one of my favorite. Ted Green, Lyle Moffat. It just goes. Perry Miller.
I got a great Ted Green. I got a great Ted Green story for you. We're in, and by the way, before we go too far on that Czech series, Mike was can you say shit disturber on this show?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he was, but Perry Miller was the one that was really the antagonist in that fight. I mean, Mike may have started rubbing it a little bit, but Perry Miller was the one that made it a gong show. And, that's what I'm sure Norm remembers is we were lucky to escape being alive in that show. But anyway, in that whole training camp, it was just amazing how everywhere we went, Bobby Hull was the show. I mean, even in Gothenburg and Stockholm, where you'd think Anders and Ulf and Lars-Erik Schuberg would be the heroes, it was Bobby that had most of the attention. And so one day we practiced in I shouldn't say the team practiced, I was there in Stockholm. And after the practice, we walked out to the bus, and the bus was surrounded by about 200 kids, all looking for a Bobby Hull autograph. And so we all got on the bus, and we're waiting for Bobby. And Norm, as you know, when Bobby signs, he's not going to stop until the last kid gets an autograph. So finally, guys on the bus are yelling, Bobby, get on the bus, Bobby, get on the bus. Finally, after about a half an hour, Teddy Green from the back of the bus says, everybody off. And we all got off, and we walked back to the team hotel, which was about an hour away. maybe a half hour away. And about 2 hours later, the bus pulled up with just the driver and Bobby on the bus, because Bobby stayed there till every kid got an autograph. And that's what it was like everywhere we went that whole trip. Bobby was a superstar.
Yeah.
At least we could have had some beer on the bus, we might have stayed. But
yeah,
it was a long walk, I tell you.
Yeah, I've still got some great pictures from that series, Normie, and the stuff we saw. Not only incredible atmosphere for a training camp, but the history of the cities we were in. The Wasa boat in Sweden that we got to go and see, where they had revived it, and all the marine life architecture on the waterfront, and then in Prague, I was just blown away by the first time I had been to Czechoslovakia, and blown away by the architecture and the bridges, and how they had not even though this was basically 10 years from that war, they still hadn't fixed a lot of the bridges that had been not blown up but had hit by shells, and you could see the chips out of the bridge facades that had been hit. I mean, it was like going to a history lesson, and have that be a pleasurable part of an incredible training camp as well.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right, Peter. Prague's one of my favorite places in the world. Just before we go on, I want to let everybody know that just below Norm, it says Greg Bowden. It's not Greg. Greg's an incredible guy, and we love him. It's Norm. So know that you're listening and talking to Norm Bowden. Peter, I wanted to ask you a question about broadcasting. I played for the Canadian team for 10 years, and when I finished, I got into the broadcast booth to do the color for the para ice hockey. When did you know that broadcasting was going to be your career, and how did you get into it? How did that love for broadcasting come about?
It's incredible. It's an incredible story. I lived in Fort William, Ontario, and my dad built us a 120-foot rink on our backyard, and every winter we would spend hours and hours and hours on this rink. And one of the guys that came from down the street to lace them up all the time was a guy that was 2 years older than me. His name was Ken Nicholson. And Ken Nicholson went to a rival high school, and he and I became buddies through my backyard rink. And then he really became an incredible buddy when he got a driver's license and had a car. And so you can imagine, as a 15, 16-year-old, if one of your buddies has a car, he's going to be a popular guy. Well, Kenny got a job at CJLX Radio in Fort William, which was a new AM station, and he was a sports guy, and he was very good. And when I turned 18, I guess it was, Kenny every Saturday would take me into the studio with him. I would go in and watch him cut tape. And as you know, back in those, maybe you don't know, in those days, when we say cut tape, you actually did cut tape. You would take a monster tape recorder, record an interview, and then you'd splice it out and actually use a razor blade to cut it and splice the tape together, stuff that we do digitally now in seconds. Anyway, I would go in there and watch him do that and listen to him do his sports. And at the same time, another ex-NHLer who Norm would not have known but would know of, an ex-NHLer by the name of Pentti Lund, was a Finn guy who came over and played in the National Hockey League. He was the sports editor of the newspaper in Fort William. And because he lost his playing career when he lost his eye. And his daughter went to school with me. And because of that, I somehow got a job writing the local fastball stories from the big semi-pro fastball league. And so one day, the guy that does the PA announcing didn't show up, and I had to do the broadcasting, saying the next batter is Charlie Smith or something. Anyway, so I got my first microphone training. Then watching Kenny every week when we go in. Finally, one day he picked me up and he says, "We're going to the station. I got something for you to try out." And we went to the station, and we went straight into the owner's office. And the guy's name was Max McGowan. And he said, we're talking like 1964 now, or 64. And he said, I want you to know that I've taken a job at the rival station in Port Arthur that's got the TV and the radio, and they want me to do TV, but they won't let me out of my contract here until I get a replacement. So guess what? You're it. And so the owner said, can this kid do the job? And Fryer said, well, he's got a sportscast in 3 minutes to read, so here it is, and he's going on the air to do it. So at 18 years of age, I went on the air, read my first sportscast live. It was my audition, I guess, and I got the job. And so coincidentally, a couple of years later, after that, paid my way through university, and I started my high school teaching career. Kenny went to Winnipeg, and I got his job at the TV station, and that's how I got into broadcasting.
Hey guys, I wanted to pull up the original logo of that team that you guys. Is that the original from that time?
Well, that's the one that was on the jersey, as you can see, but it's not the original. No.
Okay.
So the original is a longitudinal, just the word Jets, and this is a good story. In 2004, I was with a group in Toronto that was trying to revive the WHA.
That's right.
The four teams that had been assumed by the NHL when the merger took place, the NHL protected the trademarks of all the logos of those four teams, so we couldn't touch them, except they forgot about the original Jet logo. So we protected the original Jet logo and mass produced hundreds of Bobby Hull jerseys with that original Jet logo, which our group trademarked. And to this day, the NHL still hasn't trademarked that original Jets logo.
Wow.
So here's another great picture. This is a picture of the 1975-76.
That's a pretty good team.
Yeah.
One of the guys in the middle, two of the guys in the middle are no longer with us. In the very center is Bob Graham, who was one of the owners in those days, and basically, along with Barry Schenkro, made sure that the team survived. But right beside that was Dr. Jerry Wilson, who is Colin Wilson's grandfather and Kerry Wilson's dad. And, he played an integral part, as Norm would let you know, an integral part in all those Swedes and Finns coming to North America. And, a lot of people say in that way, he's the guy that revolutionized the game by convincing somebody that those kids could play.
Norm, who was the captain of that team?
It was Schoberg, Lars Erik Schoberg.
He was the captain. Okay.
Yeah, he was the captain. Great guy, great hockey player, a great family guy, and it was a pleasure to play with him and win a championship. With this
Norm, tell our listeners one or two guys on that team that maybe didn't get the recognition that a Bobby Hall did, but that were critical to the winning of the Avco Cup.
Well, probably Schoberg was one of them for sure, and Mike Ford. Well, with that lineup we had like the 7 Swedes and 2 Finns. Everybody was instrumental in winning the Avco Cup and winning that championship. So I can't really pick anybody that could not be mentioned a lot. So because we had a lot of chemistry in that team, so it made it a championship team for sure.
So Bobby Frum was the coach, but I noticed Bobby Hull was the assistant coach. Peter, tell us about that. How did that all?
Well, it started off. He was going to be the coach in '72. I think, Norm. I mean, I just heard about this. He was going to be the coach in '72, and then
the player
coach, and then Nick McCoskey had to go behind the bench with Bobby to start the season because the NHL filed a grievance against Bobby playing in the WHA. And you would know, Norm, I can't remember how many weeks or months it was until Bobby could actually lace him up and play. By that time, Nick McCoskey was sort of the guy behind the bench. So Bobby was always listed as a playing coach, but in fact, he did more on ice that first year than actual coaching, I think.
Yeah, I think he came on we had played about 10 games, and then he was able to play. And so that's how I got on with Chris Bordelot and Bobby Hull. We just were put together by McCoskey. In the first game, we were just going like crazy, scoring goals, and we never turned back. And our line became the luxury line, which we accumulated about 300 points between the three of us. So. I mean, great memories, great to play with Bobby Hull, of course. And
hey, Norm, who was your winger? Who was your winger when Bobby couldn't play?
Well, I was playing with Don Crusoe, and
Yeah.
he was alternating players so he could make a team line with us. But actually, we never had a real line till Bobby came along, and of course we got together, and the rest is history.
Hey, listen, this is the time of the Avco Cup, of course. Courtnall Howe, he won a couple Avco Cups. Stephen Rosen has brought this up with his son, Mark and Marty. How cool was that, Norm and Peter, of course, to see this incredible icon play till as late as he did, but also to play with both of his sons?
Well, as you very well know, Winnipeg, we had a great lineup. We covered everything from the goalie to defense to forwards. We were at the top of our game. And of course, playing against the Houston Aeros, we had to contend playing against Gordie Howe and his boys. So that was a challenge right there. And, we thought we were going to probably play in a 7-game series. But fortunately, with our depth, with our talent, we overcame the Howes and the Houston Aeros. So it was great just beating them because, beating Gordie was great.
I met Gordie through Bobby, of course, and that first year that Houston came to town with Bobby and with Gordie rather, Bobby and I set something up, and it worked once so well we did it again. My father was a huge NHL fan growing up when I was growing up in Fort William, obviously, and he and my mom came to town to visit, and I asked my dad if he'd like to go to the rink. He might even get a chance to see Bobby Hull. Well, I'd already preset this up, so he was like super excited that he was going to get a chance to see Bobby. And so, as you know, Gord, and all you guys know the way the dressing room was set up, and you walk down that tunnel right to the Jets bench, and the penalty box was just on the other beside you. And so we waited till the Jets skate was over, and they were flooding the ice, but Bobby stayed on the ice, and he was over at the other bench, which was across the way in those days, and he was pretending that he was talking to Gordie, and he and Gordie were standing there talking. And so my dad and I walked down that long tunnel that you go past your dressing room to the ice, and we stood by the rink boards, and I said to my dad, that's Bobby Hull over there, and I think he's talking to Gordie Howe. And so when I lifted my hand up to point that that's who they were, that was Bobby's signal, and he and Gordie took off straight across center ice, full speed, did a 2-foot stop right and kicked snow all over my dad. Both dropped their gloves and stuck out their hand and said, "Harry Young, we were waiting for you to come and say hi to us someday." My dad was like, he couldn't speak for about a week when these guys did that. It was spectacular.
If I may tell a little story about Gordie Howe, I remember we were playing him one game, and I sort of hit him, and I don't think I hurt him, but all of a sudden he's coming after me. So Bill Friday was the referee, so I get behind Bill Friday and I says, "Hold me back, hold me back." I didn't want to get hammered, because I would have had to fight the 3 Howes, and that'd be quite a feat.
I've got some video of one of the games where Andre Lacroix went behind the net, come flying behind the net. Gordie hit him with an elbow and took him right back up over the top of the net. You didn't want to mess with Gordie in the corners.
Those are great stories, and you talk about the game nowadays, and I don't like to go back, and I'm 60, and my brother's on the show all the time. He's 4 years older than me, so I was fortunate to have him take me to a lot of games, and you see the class of the players back in the day. I wanted to ask you both a question. Number one to Peter. Back in the day, Norm was talking about the luxury line, and I'm a big Blackhawk fan from way back. The MPH line and different. Why do you think nowadays we don't have that anymore? You don't hear those lines of combinations of words and letters. It's just players play. Why do you think that is, Peter?
Well, you know what? What was Norm? What was the name of the big Boston line? What did they call that line?
Crowd line.
Yeah, the Coat line. Yeah. I think what happened is, and Norm, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Back up until about the early '70s, mid '70s, when you played on a line, those three guys stayed on the ice for like a minute 20, a minute 30 sometimes. Your lines were basically a unit that came on the ice together and came off the ice together. So there was a big identity. Now your shift could be 20 seconds, 12 seconds, 18 seconds, or 45 seconds. And guys are jumping over the boards, interchanging all the time. And so while you may start the game on a line with somebody, you might not finish that period, never mind that shift with the same guy on that line. And so it's tougher to get an identity of three different guys. I mean, I even think of the mid '80s Jets with Mullen and McLean and Howardchuk. They played together so much, and yet we didn't have a nickname for that line or anything. It seems like, Norm, you're one of the last, with the luxury line and then the hot line. I don't remember many lines after that had nicknames.
I think the one that I loved was the Buffalo Sabres, the French Connection.
Yeah, there's another one.
Rennie Robert and Rick Martin.
Yeah, and those guys played together so much but once again, it goes back to the fact that when that line went over the boards, that line stayed on the ice until one of them got tired. It wasn't like a coach giving the silent whistle and switch them up. It was those guys played till those guys wanted to come off. Now you play much shorter shifts, and you might not, like I say, be on the ice with the same guy.
Yeah, the line don't have any staying power today, definitely. Peter.
Yeah, it's incredible listening to these old stories. Of course, Paul, we do this quite often, but obviously it's a little closer to home because I was in Winnipeg and through these times. Peter, you not only were heavily involved with WHA, you've done many things. You've been to the Olympics. Tell us the most exciting time. I know we're talking about the 75-76 team. Is there, that in itself, the first Avco Cup has got to be one of those special moments. Is there another moment? Obviously you mentioned Daryl Howardchuk, who we've lost and who we all loved. And is there another moment in Winnipeg Jets history that you could say, wow, I can't believe I witnessed that?
Yeah, I guess it would be that late May game where Dave Ellett scored in double overtime. In fact, I was just reading about it. Jeff Kirbyson, I don't know if you ever had him on yet, but he's written two incredible books, The Hotline and his new book called Broken Ribs and Popcorn. And it's about, the first one was about the WHA Jets. The second is about the NHL .1 Jets. And the first chapter of that book is that story where in double overtime, Dave Ellett scored. Thomas Steen tied up somebody on the draw, kicked the puck back to Ellett. Ellett, found the low corner on Ranford, and the Jets took a 3-1 series lead against the team that they'd never been able to knock out of the playoffs. And we all thought that this is the time, and this is going to be the one. And then Mud Murdoch started Stefan Beauregard instead of Bob Essensa in Game 7, and the rest is history. The Oilers went on to win another Stanley Cup. So that Ellett goal, I think, other than those being on the ice after the Avco Cups, I think that Ellett goal, and then even though it wasn't for the Jets, I think that the famous goal in '87 that Howardchuk set up against the Russians, playing for the Jets. I mean, it was so beautiful. I mean, when we watch it now, he'd have had 3 penalties on the same play if it was played.
Yeah, exactly.
He hooked the guy off the face-off, hooked the guy trying to get back, and then hooked the next guy that was going to get into the play to stop Mario. So, I mean, like I say, he'd have had 3 penalties by the time he got to the blue line. But those are two Howardchuk moments that, man, I'll never forget.
Hey, Paul, is it not Ken Reed? That says he calls Dale Howardchuk Dr. Hook?
Yeah, Ken Reed from Sports. Yeah, he called him.
Reed,
yeah, Dr. Hook, he called him. He absolutely loved that. Hey, guys, I love these stories. It's so incredible to listen to the old time hockey when that when the players really played for the love of the game, and I'm not saying that the players don't love the game now. It's just a whole different era. You know, Normie, last question for you, and again to people that are watching, it's Norm Bowden that we're talking to, not Greg. It says Greg.
I don't think Greg was that good.
Yeah,
Paul,
no,
not mistaken.
and not that good looking either. Greg looks good, but he's no Norm Bowden. Norm, I want to ask you one last question, and I talk to Gouche about this all the time. You know, Gouche was a player coach for a number of years. I can't imagine how difficult that was. How was it being on the bench and being on the ice, seeing Bobby have to play and coach, and how was it for one of the players to see that? Like, was it a difficult time?
Well, of course, when Bobby was a player coach, we had to put Nick McCoskey on, but it was a little difficult for Bobby to coach the team, and but we had such a great line; it made it easier for everybody. But as a player coach, it's very difficult, and I think Bobby didn't want to do that anymore, and it helped him out a lot having a coach behind the net, behind the bench.
Yeah. Good. Can you just tell our audience maybe one story, one difficult story when you were playing and coaching?
Yeah, I think, Norm, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you do that over in Sweden or Switzerland?
Well, I was a player coach in Switzerland my first year.
Yeah.
I could not speak a word of German. I couldn't even say Danke schön.
Yeah.
And, so I had an interpreter, but I was still coaching. But I had an interpreter on the bench with me to help me. And after my first year, I went to school for 2 months and 2 hours a day, and totally immersed in German. And I was coaching in German my second year, so it was good.
Yeah, you know what, player coach Paul, just quickly, because I want to go to Peter for the last question. Guys, I want to not redo it. I'd love to do this again because we've got so many great comments about, the history of the game. A lot of people don't realize all the great players that have come through, and we've kind of forgotten. So we'd love, Peter, to have you back with Norm. And if we have to, we'll take Greg too. And then maybe we can get a couple other guys, because look at this. This is a great picture. I know this would be very difficult to get, but there's the Alf, Hull, and Hedberg, of course. And then I want to ask you this one question. The issue with player coach is the fact it was the language. I was a player coach in Germany, and it happened to have East German and West German. A lot of the guys spoke Russian. And my German was awful. I only knew Hogan's Heroes, Achtung, and beer. And so when I did get some German, the East Germans had zero idea of what I was talking about because of the slang. And Norm, you would know that too. The slang from one city to the other, a window would be called 3 different names. So that was probably, the communication was the worst.
Yeah, listen, well, I sorry to cut you off, but I learned Hochdeutsch, so
yes, of course.
And then they're all speaking Schweizerdeutsch, and I couldn't understand a word they said in the dressing room. So if they talked about me, I didn't know what the hell they were saying.
I was talking, Norm?
But they understood me.
Yeah, I was talking Gouche Deutsch. I threw words in that people. It's like Esatikin. If you ever sat with Esatikin, and I had a 2-hour bus ride in Europe with him, and he sat beside me, and he couldn't speak English, couldn't speak Swedish, couldn't speak Finnish, and they always said, Peter, I'm sure you've heard this, the Tikinese. It's true. It lives, because that guy threw it all over the place. Listen, Peter, before we let you go, I wanted to ask. I've got a picture here of our buddy. Let's make sure I got it up here. Where did it go? Oh, can't pull it up for some reason. But I wanted to ask you this. Obviously, having Norm on the show, there were different lines. The luxury line had 3 names: luxury line, the century line, and the only line. In Norm, as he's here, 3 players scored over 100 points in that first season, as you alluded to, Norm. Norm, you also had 28 points in the playoffs. Tell us about, as we cannot, here's the picture, I found it. There's Normie Azouk, who we almost had on it. Tell us your fondest memory of Norm Bowden and what he meant to the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, he was, just watching these guys play the first year I got here. I mean, I had broadcast hockey in Thunder Bay, the Memorial Cup, the Allen Cup, and so that next step to be able to broadcast in the NHL caliber, which I considered WHA, it was a big thrill for me just to meet most of these guys the first summer that I moved to Winnipeg, and then the station that I'm with then was fortunate enough to broadcast some of those games that first year, and to be able to sit in the broadcast booth. And instead of some junior hockey player, although a bunch of those Memorial Cup guys went on to play in the NHL, the caliber on the ice was, pretty spectacular. And to see, the best part was I got to know Norm, and as life went on, got to know all his, his 4 children very, very well, and become very, very good friends. In fact, Dave and I were roommates in Tampa Bay for a while. And so, it was just such a thrill to on a personal level. And Carrie, you'd know this, Rosie too. In those days, you could be friends with the guys that played on the team. Media wasn't the enemy in those days. And whether it was the Bombers, Don Jonas and I became great friends, family friends to this day. Other football players the same way from those early 70s, mid 70s. I became great friends with Bobby. I talked to Bobby once a week still. I became more than great friends with Normie and his whole family. And those types of things, I mean, I could tell you stories about Normie and I and Dave at their golf course in
That's right.
in Tampa. And like I say, Dave and I were roommates when I was running a pro basketball team in St. Pete. And, to this day, still great friends. We played all those Bowden Pond King hockey tournaments together. And it was just, I don't think today a media guy will ever get the access again to the players. I can remember walking into the dressing room that WHA first season I was there, and you'd sit you just walk in and sit beside Norm or Bobby or Ulf or Anders, and somebody'd hand you a beer, and somebody'd be smoking a cigar, and Serge Savard a couple of years later would be the guy in there smoking a cigar. But I can remember Dale Howardchuk sneaking out between periods to sit past the wives' dressing room to have a smoke too. But the things that you did and the access that you had, that'll never happen again. Now you have to go through the PR guy, and you're lucky if you get to see him. So we became friends outside of the rink. I had Bobby, Ulf and Anders, the first year they were there, and their 2 wives. We used to cross-country ski all the time together. They introduced me to cross-country skiing. We had them over for fondue one time, and they had never tried Golden Cadillacs, and they got so hammered on Golden Cadillacs that I didn't know how they were going to get home. And it's so bad that they'd never had they always had cheese fondues, as you guys know, in Switzerland or in Europe. Well, in North America, we have fondues where you put steak and shrimp and that kind of stuff. And so they'd never had this. So Ulf, sadly to say, Ulf was skewering the shrimp and putting it in the grease that fry it. And our next door neighbor had asked us to babysit their goldfish while they went on a trip to Grand Forks that weekend.
Goldfish.
You know what happened, right?
Yeah. No.
Takes a fondue fork into the goldfish bowl, puts the goldfish into the oil, puts it into the dip, gulp. Next day, I'm at a pet food store buying a goldfish and putting it in a bowl so that when they came home, they don't know that their Goldie is a different Goldie. They never did.
How would you tell? Yeah, exactly.
I guess the point I'm making is the athletes accepted the media in a different role in those days. Could become friends. That'll never happen again. I don't.
If I may, Peter and Gouche, Paul, I just want to say, Peter, it's great to know you. From the day we met, we were friends, and also you helped us tremendously with our foundation. Friends of Carrie United Support for our daughter. So you were instrumental in helping us out raise money so we could pay for her a lot of her
Medical expenses, yeah. I'm so happy to be able to be involved with that. I'm so happy to know both Greg and Dave and Carrie Lynn and the whole family. I've just been fortunate to travel to a bunch of events with you guys.
And it's amazing, Peter. There's so many people talk about what you do outside of the sport, and that's one of the great things we know about you. Legendary sports reporter, broadcaster, Peter Young. Peter, thank you so much.
Gary, Rosie, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Peter.
Norm, A.K. Greg. Listen, a couple of weeks, I wouldn't mind doing this again. And Peter, if you guys could maybe get one or two, we'll do kind of a round table. We'll get more people on. And Paul, this time we'll be able to see your beautiful chiclets. And we'll be able to relive the Winnipeg Jets. Not only congratulations to the 45th anniversary for the 75-76, but there are so many great stories. And I'd love to ask you, Peter, on that on our next trip, what that experience of watching those little kids in the parade trying to collect money to keep the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg. That's
so many great stories. So many great stories, and some of the ones from Sweden I would tell here that I haven't told a lot of people.
Fantastic. Really look forward to that. All right, Normie, thank you, bud. Great to see you as usual. Of course, Peter. Absolutely.
I want to pay my condolences to the Shack family and to the Nielsen family because I spent 2 weeks with Eddie Shack and Jimmy Nielsen in Europe, and we played old timers hockey over there, and they were great guys. And I just want to send my condolences to families.
Thank you.
I'll tell you one quick story, very quick, because I know you have to wrap up. Glenn Sather and Chief Nielsen were great buddies. Anyway, Red Fisher was an art collector, and Red Fisher didn't realize what a prankster Glenn Sather was. And Glenn Sather told Red Fisher, and if you Google this, you'll see the picture. Glenn Sather told Red Fisher that he had an exclusive for him. He had a beautiful print of an Indian painting that he was going to get for Red, and Red was ecstatic. And then they have the picture of Chief Nielsen and Sather, and they're handing Red Fisher a picture of Nielsen painting his barn. In other words, an Indian painting.
Oh my God! Oh my God! All right, Peter Young, thank you for all you do.
Anytime.
We'll talk to you next couple of weeks. Thank you for joining us on Gouche Live. That's amazing.
All right, see you.
See you, Claire.
How cool is that, eh? Too, and I'll tell you what, Peter. Yeah, I want to get exclusive on Peter Young. He'd have some stories, Paul. I know, because I'm from Winnipeg, it's a little bit more, emotional. But we could go about the Bombers and Gold Eyes, and oh my God, he's probably and because as he said, and wrapping up. Unfortunately, I do have to do a call to Australia. Paul, he's absolutely 100% correct. News reporters were friends back then. There was no, there was no worry him taking a picture or recording something that we didn't want to hear about. So, and they respected it. Peter Young would respect that. If it was off record, never, ever, ever say to a reporter today, this is off record. I got hit so many times in Germany that they would, off the record. Grace would be in the newspaper before I got home.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing that you said, the respect. The respect back then was like you were talking to a family member. It doesn't happen anymore. And I'd love to get some more great stories for them down the road.
Well, we're going to do that in 2 weeks. I'm going to get Greg to organize that, and we'll get a couple of other guys with us. All right, you've been listening to Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen, brought to you by those great people at the Hockey News. And, of course, that other magazine, I think it's called the Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, they're pretty good. And Paramount Sports Management. We'll see everybody again tomorrow.
You got it, buddy. Have a good night.
You too.
Let's play some hockey.